The mess hall buzzed with chatter, trays clattering against tables, and the smell of reheated meals hanging in the air. Mara Hayes stepped in quietly, carrying a plain tray of food, her presence almost invisible among the crowd of boisterous, loud and self-assured personnel. Most heads barely glanced her way, some people whispered, casting amused looks at this simple woman, who seemed so unremarkable, so ordinary she barely registered. She moved to the end of a long table, the corner farthest from the center of attention. A few glances followed her, more curious than respectful. "Who's she?" someone murmured. Another scoffed, shaking his head. Mara ignored it all. She had learned long ago that attention wasn't earned by showing off, it was earned through action. As she settled in, balancing her tray, the unexpected happened. A loud crash erupted near the middle of the hall. A man stumbled, sending his tray flying. Food scattered across the floor, drinks splashed, and a chorus of exclamations filled the air. People turned, either startled or laughing at the minor disaster. Mara didn't flinch. Her instincts were faster than the chaos surrounding her. She stepped forward calmly, assessing the situation in a blink. The spilled tray obstructed a narrow pathway, and the person who had fallen was struggling to get up without slipping again. Without hesitation, Mara extended a hand to steady him while deftly nudging the tray aside with her foot, ensuring no one else tripped. The man's eyes widened. Thanks," he stammered. The room went silent. The laughter died abruptly as everyone realized Mara had handled the situation instantly, without panic, without hesitation. In 30 seconds the mess hall went from chaotic to orderly. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Did you see that?" someone said. Another added, "She just handled that like it was nothing." Mara kept her focus on her meal, quietly taking a seat, unbothered by the sudden attention. But her eyes flicked subtly across the room, reading reactions. People were shocked, confused. A junior officer muttered, I didn't know she could do that." A more senior voice sneered, almost defensively, "It's just a mess hall accident. Anyone could have." But Mara's calm composure, the precision of her movements, and the way she had diffused potential chaos spoke louder than words. Skepticism lingered, but curiosity and a hint of respect had begun to take root. Then came the second incident, something far more subtle but equally revealing. A server tripped near the food counter, a tray teetering dangerously. Mara reacted instinctively again. In one fluid motion she steadied the tray with her hand, caught a falling plate, and even adjusted the server's step to prevent a full-on spill. All in the space of a heartbeat. The mess hall collectively gasped. People leaned back in their chairs, some gripping the edge in astonishment. Mara simply returned to her seat, keeping her posture relaxed, her face unreadable. Her actions had spoken louder than any bravado. By now, the whispers had escalated into an audible murmur. People who had dismissed her as unremarkable now stared openly, uncertain how to react. A few attempted small talk, hesitant and awkward. "Oh, Mara, that was impressive," a young man said, clearly fumbling for words. She tilted her head, a faint smile forming. "Thanks," she said simply, her tone even, almost casual. "It's just about observing and reacting. Nothing more." The sincerity in her words, combined with the effortless skill she had displayed, struck everyone in the room. No arrogance. No showmanship. Just calm, precise action that made a lasting impression. By the time the third incident occurred, a minor scuffle at the drink station, Mara had already become the center of attention. Two people were arguing over a misplaced bottle, tension rising. Mara approached, her demeanor calm and commanding without demanding authority. She separated them, clarified the misunderstanding with a few quiet words, and in under a minute the conflict dissolved. Both parties walked away, sheepish but thankful. Mara returned to her seat, and the mess hall fell into a stunned silence. A senior officer, previously skeptical, leaned toward a colleague and muttered, "I think we've all underestimated her." Jackson, observing from across the room, whispered, "Underestimated is one word for it, terrifyingly competent is another." Elena, sitting beside Mara, smiled softly. "She's not just competent, she's different." Mara, sensing the shift in perception, didn't gloat. She finished her meal calmly, the way she had always done. The chaos of the room, the surprised stares, and the murmurs of awe were irrelevant to her. What mattered was presence, precision, and calm, qualities she had cultivated long before anyone had noticed her. By the end of the meal, the mess hall's energy had shifted entirely. Laughter and chatter returned, but it carried a new undertone, respect mixed with a hint of wariness. People who had whispered dismissively now kept their distance, some stealing glances, unsure what to make of the woman who had, in 30 seconds, turned chaos into order. Mara stood, tray empty, and walked toward the exit. The room watched silently as she passed. In that brief walk she had made her mark, not through loud proclamations or overt displays, but through action, skill, and composure. The simple woman was no longer invisible. The truth of her capabilities had hit the mess hall like a brick, and everyone who had doubted her now had to reconsider everything they thought they knew. As Mara exited into the cool afternoon air, she allowed herself a small, private smile. This was just the beginning. The mess hall had been the first test, a subtle proving ground. Those who had doubted her had learned a lesson in humility, but Mara knew the real challenges were yet to come. And when they arrived, she would meet them with the same calm precision that had earned her the first wave of astonishment. The morning after the mess hall incident, whispers followed Mara Hayes wherever she went. People who had dismissed her as ordinary now watched cautiously, uncertain what to expect next. The cafeteria chaos had been a minor display, but it was enough to shift perceptions. The quiet, simple woman had revealed a glimpse of capability no one had anticipated. Mara, as usual, moved with calm precision, ignoring the lingering stares. Her eyes scanned the corridor as she walked, noting every detail, the small cracks in walls, the placement of equipment, the subtle tension in others' movements. It wasn't paranoia. It was habit. Observation had saved her more times than she could count. Later that day, a small crisis unfolded in the supply room. A stack of crates had become unstable, threatening to topple onto a group of unsuspecting trainees. Mara, walking by, noticed the danger immediately. Without hesitation, she assessed the weight, calculated leverage points, and shifted her stance. With one swift, fluid motion, she stabilized the stack and nudged it safely back into place. The trainees froze, then erupted in quiet amazement. One of them whispered, "Did she just?" "Yes," another replied wide-eyed. "She just stopped a disaster without even thinking about it." Mara's actions weren't just about reflexes. They were precision, skill, and trained judgment working in perfect harmony. Few knew the depth of her background. Years of tactical training, survival drills, and problem-solving under extreme pressure. She had learned to remain calm when everyone else panicked, to anticipate chaos before it struck, and to act decisively without hesitation. Yet she never flaunted her abilities. To most, she remained unassuming, quietly observing. To Mara, skill was measured by results, not applause. By midday the rumor mill had grown. Even senior officers, previously skeptical, were now curious. They approached cautiously, seeking explanation, perhaps hoping to catch her in a mistake. "Miss Hayes," a lieutenant asked, "your actions this morning, remarkable. But how do you always remain so composed?" Mara tilted her head, a faint smile touching her lips. "Observation and preparation," she said simply. "Every situation has variables. Notice them. Adjust. That's all." The lieutenant blinked, clearly impressed but unsure how to respond. Mara's humility masked the depth of her expertise, making her presence all the more enigmatic. The afternoon brought a different kind of test. A simulation exercise required her and a small team to navigate a complex obstacle course under time pressure. The other participants assumed she would lag behind. Mara moved swiftly, methodically, reading the course, calculating angles, and adjusting her pace to maximize efficiency. She helped teammates through tricky sections, offering subtle guidance rather than overt instruction. By the end, she had completed the course flawlessly, faster than anyone else, and with 0 errors. The observers, watching from above, exchanged stunned glances. Commander Davis muttered under his breath, "She's on a different level." Even as recognition grew, subtle skepticism lingered. A few colleagues whispered that she might have had insider knowledge, unfair advantages, or prior exposure to the scenarios. Mara ignored the murmurs. She had learned long ago that doubt from others was inevitable when someone operated outside expectations. Instead, she focused on preparation for the next challenge. Every observation, every small calculation, every practiced maneuver, these were tools, not weapons. Results were proof, not explanation. Later, Mara returned to the mess hall, where the morning's chaos had become a story in itself. Trainees and seasoned personnel alike watched her enter, some uncertain whether to greet her, others silently curious. She carried herself with the same quiet confidence, unbothered by the attention. A small group of younger trainees approached. "Miss Hayes, can you show us how you handle things so quickly? How you stay so calm?" one asked. Mara smiled faintly, gesturing for them to follow her to a nearby corner where they could safely practice situational awareness. "It's not about speed or strength," she said, demonstrating careful observation, calculated movement and anticipating outcomes. "It's about noticing variables before they become problems. You can train your mind as much as your body." By the end of the session, the trainees were exhausted but enlightened, realizing that skill was as much mental as it was physical. Mara had taught more in 30 minutes than they had absorbed in weeks of training drills. Meanwhile, in the corner of the mess hall, a group of skeptical officers exchanged glances. "I still don't trust her," one said quietly. "She makes it all look effortless. How can one person be that prepared?" Another shook his head. "Effortless or not, she's undeniable. We can't ignore it anymore." Mara, overhearing only fragments of the conversation, didn't react. She had long stopped seeking approval. Observation and action were enough. The rest, opinions, judgments, and assumptions, were irrelevant to results. As the day ended, Mara walked alone along the perimeter of the training grounds, reflecting on the small victories and subtle recognition she had earned. She understood that each display of skill, while impressive, was just a step in a much larger journey. The real tests were yet to come. Situations where stakes were higher, consequences real, and success uncertain. But Mara welcomed the challenge. She had turned doubt into recognition, in mere hours, through calm, decisive action. And she knew that the next trials would test not just her skill, but her judgment, patience, and resilience in ways the mess hall never could. By nightfall, whispers of Mara Hayes' capabilities had spread throughout the base. Some colleagues respected her, some envied her, and a few remained skeptical. One thing was certain: no one underestimated her anymore. This simple woman had revealed a fraction of her hidden strength, leaving everyone to wonder what else she was capable of. Mara gazed at the stars above, letting the cool night wind brush against her face. She knew the real journey was just beginning. The mess hall had been the first battlefield of perception. Tomorrow would be the first true test of what lay beneath calm composure and hidden skill. And Mara Hayes was ready. The base's training yard was buzzing with activity, a mix of frustration, laughter, and anticipation. Today wasn't just another drill. Today was Mara Hayes' first high-stakes test under official observation, designed to measure speed, problem-solving, and adaptability. Unlike her previous unofficial displays of skill, this one carried consequences. Scores would be recorded, reputations judged, and failures noted. Mara approached the starting line calmly, her gaze sweeping the course. Obstacles twisted, uneven terrain tested balance, and a series of surprise challenges had been strategically placed to simulate real-world unpredictability. Other participants looked tense, muttering to one another, their confidence wavering as they noticed Mara's serene demeanor. Jackson nudged Elena, whispering, "I'm betting she'll finish this without breaking a sweat. Watch how everyone else freaks out." Elena grinned. "She makes it look so easy, but I know it's all calculation, all awareness. She's thinking 5 steps ahead." Mara didn't hear them, her mind focused entirely on the course. Observation first, calculation second, execution third. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She simply moved. The horn sounded and the test began. Participants surged forward, some leaping recklessly over obstacles, others pausing to assess. Mara adjusted her pace, scanning each section for risks, opportunities, and optimal paths. She helped a teammate stumble over a rope bridge by quietly guiding their balance, but never slowed herself. Efficiency and precision were her guides, not ego or competition. Within minutes, chaos erupted behind her. One competitor had misjudged a jump, sprawling across the mud pit and sending a chain reaction of tripping bodies. Mara, observing calmly, anticipated the unfolding mess and navigated a clear path, avoiding any collisions. The spectators gasped at her poise amidst the panic. Halfway through the course, the first critical challenge appeared, a simulated hostage scenario with timed restraints. Participants scrambled, fumbling with knots and panic rising. Mara knelt, assessing the ropes, the simulated hostage's position, and potential risks. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, untangling knots and instructing the hostage with calm confidence. "Stay still. Trust me," she said softly. In seconds, the restraint was removed, the simulated hostage free, and Mara continued her course without hesitation. Observers murmured, "She's incredible." The next segment tested problem-solving under pressure. A series of locked compartments, each requiring logic and dexterity to open. Time penalties were significant. Others struggled, growing frustrated, while Mara approached methodically. She analyzed patterns, remembered prior drills, and executed solutions with efficiency that left instructors taking notes in stunned silence. Jackson whispered to Elena, "I think she's operating on a level nobody else even knows exists." Elena nodded. "And she's calm the whole time. I can't imagine what it's like to have that kind of focus." The final challenge loomed ahead, a suspended obstacle course simulating narrow ledges above a drop. Balance, precision, and nerves were critical. Mara assessed the course silently, measuring each step, each handhold, each swing of potential movement. Her calmness contrasted starkly with the anxiety around her. Halfway across, a gust of wind rocked the obstacles. Participants wavered, some frozen in fear. Mara adjusted her stance instantly, subtle shifts in weight, precise handholds, careful breathing. She moved with grace and focus, reaching the end flawlessly, her calm unbroken despite the chaos around her. When the timer ended, the results were astonishing. Mara had completed the course faster than anyone with 0 mistakes, while many competitors had accrued multiple penalties or failed sections entirely. Gasps, murmurs, and incredulous stares rippled through the crowd. Commander Davis stepped forward, his usual stern demeanor softened. "Mara Hayes," he said, voice carrying authority and awe, "that was exceptional. Your performance under pressure, calm, precise, and decisive, is beyond what I've ever observed in a first-time test." Mara nodded quietly. "Thank you, sir. I only followed the course as instructed, observed, and adjusted accordingly." Even the skeptical officers couldn't hide their astonishment. One muttered, "She makes it all look effortless, but it's more than that. It's awareness, strategy, anticipation. No one else even comes close." Jackson laughed softly, shaking his head. "We've all been playing checkers while she's playing chess." Elena smiled. "And somehow she does it without a hint of arrogance." Mara remained composed. She had earned recognition, yes, but she understood something the observers didn't. True skill was not in showing off, but in executing perfectly under pressure, adapting to chaos and remaining calm when others faltered. After the test, Mara was approached by a senior officer. "Miss Hayes, your adaptability and composure are exceptional. I want to know, have you undergone prior training beyond our programs?" Mara's faint smile returned. "Sir, I have experience in situations requiring observation, calculation, and calm execution. Beyond that, results speak for themselves." The officer nodded, scribbling notes. "Indeed. The results are undeniable." The day ended with a mix of awe, reflection, and subtle humor. Trainees and seasoned personnel alike replayed Mara's flawless performance in their minds. She had turned skepticism into astonishment, doubt into admiration, all without a word of self-promotion. Even in casual conversations later, the tone had shifted. "I didn't think anyone could do that," one trainee admitted. "She did it like it was nothing," another said. Mara, listening quietly from a distance, allowed herself a rare private smile. The mess hall chaos had been only a warm-up. The obstacle course was the first true test of her skill under scrutiny. And she had passed effortlessly, calmly, and decisively. By nightfall, whispers about Mara Hayes' abilities had spread further. Some colleagues were inspired, others intimidated. A few skeptics remained, their doubts lingering, but even they couldn't ignore the evidence. Mara had proven she could perform flawlessly under pressure, navigate chaos with composure, and execute solutions with precision. As she walked back to her quarters, Mara reflected on the day's lessons. Observation, calculation, composure, these weren't just tactics. They were principles. They formed the foundation of everything she would face next. Higher stakes, more complex challenges, and scrutiny that would push her beyond anything she had yet encountered. She was ready. The following morning, the base hummed with routine drills, but Mara Hayes sensed a subtle tension in the air. Not all threats were obvious. Some hid behind casual conversations, misaligned schedules, or whispers in the corridors. Mara had learned long ago that chaos didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it crept silently, unnoticed until it became a problem. She moved through the compound with her usual calm precision, scanning faces, movements, and patterns. Something was off. A senior officer seemed unusually nervous, pausing to check messages repeatedly. A fellow trainee avoided eye contact when she passed. Even the equipment seemed slightly displaced, just enough to raise a subtle alarm in Mara's instincts. Jackson noticed her scrutiny. "What are you looking at?" he asked, a hint of worry in his voice. Mara didn't reply immediately. "Patterns," she said finally. "Small anomalies, nothing overt. But anomalies indicate potential instability. We need to monitor carefully. Elena raised an eyebrow. You think someone's setting a trap? Mara shrugged slightly. Not necessarily a trap. Just a variable that could create significant consequences if ignored. By mid-morning, the first sign of trouble manifested. A critical shipment of supplies was missing from the storage area. Panic began to ripple through the team with people shouting, checking logs and blaming each other. Mara as always remained calm. She assessed the situation, timing, personnel access and security patterns. Within seconds she identified several inconsistencies that no one else had noticed. The logs don't match the delivery schedule, she murmured, pointing out discrepancies. And certain access points weren't properly monitored. The theft likely occurred during that window. Senior officers were impressed, and startled. Mara's keen observation had narrowed down the potential culprits within minutes, something that would have taken others hours if not longer. Later that day, Mara noticed subtle interactions between two officers in the mess hall. A whispered conversation, furtive glances, and the sudden absence of a critical item suggested more than coincidence. She followed her instincts, noting body language, timing, and the patterns of movement. A sudden alert sounded. One of the restricted areas had been breached. Mara acted immediately, coordinating quietly but decisively with security personnel. Her calm demeanor contrasted with the chaos erupting around her. In minutes, the breach was contained, the potential threat neutralized, and the missing item recovered. Colleagues who had doubted her were now openly amazed. Jackson shook his head in disbelief. She saw all that, and nobody even realized anything was wrong until she acted. Elena nodded. It's like she can predict the future, or at least every variable that matters. Mara remained focused. Observation was her tool, preparation her weapon. The mess hall chaos and obstacle course had been practice. This real potential sabotage was the test that truly mattered. Despite her success, Mara couldn't ignore a subtle unease. Someone on base had planned disruption carefully, relying on others' complacency. The incidents weren't personal, they were strategic. And Mara understood that strategy without skill could be dangerous, but skill without caution was equally lethal. She began monitoring the compound more closely, noting patterns, anticipating potential errors, and preparing contingencies. Mara didn't speak loudly, she didn't need to. Her actions communicated her presence and authority clearly. The tension escalated that afternoon during a routine drill. Mara noticed a trainee hesitating at a critical junction, their confusion creating a bottleneck that could compromise the exercise. She intervened seamlessly, guiding them with subtle instructions that corrected the error without drawing unnecessary attention. A senior officer observing the drill muttered, "Who taught her to handle these situations so instinctively?" Jackson smirked. "Nobody. She just sees it before it happens." Elena added quietly, "And she acts without hesitation. That's what makes her different." By evening, Mara had pieced together the puzzle. The anomalies, missing supplies, and subtle disruptions all pointed to a single pattern, a coordinated attempt to test the base's vigilance, possibly by someone with knowledge of its routines. She reported her findings to Commander Davis, outlining every discrepancy, observation, and inferred intention. The commander listened intently, impressed not only by her analysis but by the clarity and calm with which she presented it. "Miss Hayes," he said finally, "you've done more than just identify anomalies. You've prevented a situation from escalating into something serious. I don't know many officers who could do this under pressure, and with such precision." Mara's expression remained calm. "Sir, it's not about recognition. It's about ensuring outcomes remain stable. Preparation and observation are essential in unpredictable situations." That night, Mara sat alone reflecting on the day's events. The unseen threat had been neutralized, but it had taught her a crucial lesson. Vigilance was never optional, and perception could be as important as action. Even in a structured environment like the base, chaos could manifest subtly, and only those who observed carefully could prevent serious consequences. She realized her previous successes, mess hall, obstacle course, had been necessary, but the stakes were rising. Each test increased scrutiny, responsibility, and the potential for error. Mara welcomed it. She had proven her ability to adapt, anticipate, and act. But the true measure of skill was in recognizing threats before they became crises. Meanwhile, whispers of Mara Hayes' abilities continued to spread. Some colleagues were in awe, others wary, and a few skeptical observers began asking questions. But no one could deny her results. As she prepared for rest that night, Mara's mind raced, not with fear but with strategy. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and she intended to meet them as she always had, calm, prepared, and observant. The unseen threat had been neutralized, but Mara knew that bigger challenges lay ahead, waiting silently, testing skill, judgment, and composure. And she was ready. The morning air was crisp, carrying a tension that Mara Hayes could feel before anyone else noticed. The base was quiet, but she knew better than to trust appearances. Something bigger than the previous disruptions was brewing, subtle, coordinated, and designed to test not only skills but judgment under pressure. Mara moved methodically through the halls, scanning faces, movements, and patterns. Each step was deliberate. Her mind ran calculations: who was where, when, and why. Everything mattered. She didn't speak much, she didn't need to. Her presence alone was enough to draw attention and, more importantly, to focus her instincts. By mid-morning, a sudden alarm sounded, unexpected, urgent, and unusual. Personnel scrambled, unsure whether it was a drill or a real threat. Mara's instincts kicked in instantly. She noticed a discrepancy in the emergency report. A section of the base listed as secure had actually been accessed without authorization. She acted immediately, leading a small team to investigate. Every movement was precise, every instruction clear. Within minutes, Mara had identified the source: a group of operatives attempting to manipulate systems to access sensitive areas. They had counted on confusion, hesitation, and distraction, but Mara's calm, observant approach had neutralized their advantage. When the group realized they had been anticipated, shock and panic set in. Mara didn't gloat. She issued clear directives: contain the operatives, secure the area, and report findings. By the time senior officers arrived, the situation was fully under control. Commander Davis, arriving last, studied Mara with a mix of astonishment and relief. "Mara Hayes," he said, voice tinged with disbelief, "you've prevented a potentially serious breach." "How did you?" Mara met his gaze calmly. "Observation, preparation, and decisive action, sir. They relied on assumptions. I relied on patterns." Word of Mara's decisive intervention spread quickly. Those who had doubted her began to reassess everything they thought they knew. In the mess hall, whispers of awe and speculation filled the air. "She saw it coming," one trainee said. "Before anyone else even noticed," another added. Even skeptics couldn't ignore the evidence. Mara's ability to anticipate, adapt, and execute under pressure had changed the perception of her entirely. She was no longer the quiet, underestimated woman. They had been confronted with undeniable competence. Later, in the command center, Mara reviewed footage and reports from the incident. She analyzed patterns, timing, and tactics used by the intruders, providing insights that exceeded expectations. Her recommendations not only resolved the immediate threat but also suggested preventative measures for future security. A senior officer muttered, half in awe, half in disbelief, "She's not just capable, she's visionary. Who trains like this?" Jackson whispered to Elena, grinning, "I think she's rewriting the rules for all of us." Elena nodded. Quietly, efficiently, and without showing off. That's what makes her dangerous, in a good way. As the day progressed, Mara continued her routine, but the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. People who had previously ignored or underestimated her now observed every move. Some approached her for guidance, others simply watched, unsure how to interact. Mara handled each interaction with calm professionalism, never flaunting her capabilities, yet ensuring that respect was earned. The subtle power of observation and action became increasingly evident. Colleagues realized that Mara's skill wasn't just about reflexes or strength. It was strategy, anticipation, and composure under pressure. Every decision had weight, every move had consequence, and Mara demonstrated mastery over all three. By evening, a debriefing convened. Mara presented her analysis, detailing not only the immediate events but also the broader implications. Her clarity, precision, and insight left senior officers and peers alike impressed, and somewhat unnerved. Commander Davis concluded the session with rare praise. "Mara Hayes, you've done more than handle a crisis. You've demonstrated understanding, foresight, and execution that surpasses expectations. The base is safer because of your actions." Mara responded simply, "I only acted on what I observed, sir." The situation dictated the response. Back in the mess hall, Mara quietly took her seat for a late meal. The room was abuzz with conversation, some in awe, some in disbelief. A group of officers discussed her actions openly, speculating on her background, training, and potential. Jackson leaned toward Elena, whispering, "She's a puzzle nobody can figure out. And somehow she stays calm through all of it." Elena nodded, smiling faintly. That calm, that observation, it's why she succeeds. She doesn't react emotionally. She reacts rationally. Mara, overhearing only fragments, allowed herself a subtle smile. The recognition was satisfying, yes, but her focus remained on preparation for the next challenge. Today had proven skill, tomorrow would test judgment, and the day after that, she didn't know yet. But she would be ready. As night fell, Mara reflected on the day's events. The truth had unfolded spectacularly. She had prevented disruption, exposed a hidden threat, and earned the respect of those who had doubted her. Yet, she knew that every revelation carried consequences. People would now watch her more closely. Expectations would rise. Scrutiny would sharpen. She welcomed it. Observation, preparation, and action were her tools. She had mastered them, and each new challenge was an opportunity to refine her skills further. The mess hall, the drills, and the threats had all been practice, building toward something greater. Mara understood that mastery wasn't about avoiding chaos. It was about navigating it with precision, foresight, and composure. Finally, as she prepared for rest, a subtle unease lingered. Though the immediate threat had been neutralized, she knew that someone, or something, had orchestrated the incidents with intent. The true extent of the challenge had yet to reveal itself. Mara didn't fear the unknown, she welcomed it. Observation, preparation, and decisive action had brought her this far, and they would carry her forward into whatever lay ahead. With a final glance at the night sky, Mara Hayes allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The truth had been revealed. The consequences of action had been felt. And yet, a larger challenge loomed, unseen but inevitable. And Mara would meet it as she always had, calm, prepared, and unshakable. The morning after the incident, the base felt different. Mara Hayes walked through the corridors, calm as ever, but the atmosphere around her had shifted noticeably. Whispers followed her wherever she went, some filled with admiration, others tinged with suspicion. The previous day's revelations had established her as someone who could not be underestimated, and everyone sensed it. Even casual interactions carried weight now. Trainees approached her cautiously, officers watched her silently, and senior commanders referenced her actions in passing with a mix of respect and awe. Mara, as always, remained composed, understanding that recognition was only part of her mission. Results, not praise, mattered. Jackson caught up with her near the training grounds, a grin on his face. "Well, Mara, I think you've officially broken the base. People don't know whether to follow you or stay out of your way." Mara allowed herself a faint smile. Observing and acting decisively tends to have that effect. It's not intentional. Elena joined them, nodding. Intentional or not, you've changed how everyone operates. They'll be more alert, more cautious, and, hopefully, more competent because of it. Mara studied the training yard, noting minor irregularities that others might miss. "Competence is relative," she said quietly. "We can always improve, anticipate, and prepare. That's what matters." By mid-morning, the fallout began in full. Senior officers convened a meeting to discuss the implications of Mara's recent actions. Her performance, though exemplary, had disrupted expectations and routines. Some officials argued she had set the bar impossibly high, creating pressure for others who might fail to meet it. Commander Davis, however, defended her. "Mara Hayes has demonstrated exactly what we need: skill, composure, and foresight. Her actions prevented disruption, mitigated risk, and set a new standard. That standard should inspire, not intimidate." A few skeptical voices muttered, but even they couldn't dispute the results. Mara's calm efficiency had produced undeniable outcomes, and that clarity left little room for argument. The next challenge came unexpectedly. Mara was called to oversee a complex coordination exercise involving multiple teams and simultaneous objectives. Mistakes would have real consequences: delays, failed drills, and potential safety risks. She accepted the assignment without hesitation, understanding that leadership under pressure was as important as personal skill. She moved through the exercise with calculated precision, observing each team, noting strengths and weaknesses, and subtly guiding participants without overt control. Her instructions were minimal but effective, allowing individuals to act independently while ensuring outcomes aligned with overall objectives. Jackson whispered to Elena as they watched Mara in action. "I don't know how she does it. She's everywhere at once, yet nowhere people notice. And everything works." Elena nodded, eyes wide. "It's mastery of observation. She sees patterns, anticipates consequences, and adapts instantly. That's why she succeeds where others flounder." Even the skeptical officers couldn't hide their surprise. Mara's quiet leadership had transformed a potentially chaotic exercise into a smooth, successful operation. But recognition brought new tension. Some colleagues, intimidated by her competence, began whispering behind her back, questioning methods, timing, and decisions. Others openly sought guidance, hoping to learn from her approach without confronting their own insecurities. Mara noticed these dynamics but remained unaffected. She understood that competence often provoked envy, admiration, or skepticism, and all were irrelevant if the mission succeeded. By mid-afternoon, the tension escalated further. A routine inspection revealed an unexpected anomaly in base security protocols. Mara immediately analyzed the situation, identifying minor but significant oversights that others had overlooked. Acting decisively, she corrected the issues, preventing potential problems before they escalated. Her actions were seamless, almost invisible to the untrained eye, but those paying attention understood the significance. Mara had once again mitigated risk before it became crisis. The evening debrief brought further recognition. Commander Davis acknowledged Mara publicly, emphasizing the importance of her observations, quick judgment, and leadership under pressure. "Mara Hayes," he said, "you've demonstrated excellence in both skill and leadership. Your actions have prevented disruption, ensured safety, and elevated standards across the base." Applause followed, tempered with awe. Mara accepted the acknowledgement with quiet humility, aware that accolades were fleeting compared to sustained results. As night fell, Mara returned to her quarters, reflecting on the day's events. The recognition was gratifying but not her goal. What mattered was preparedness, clarity of thought, and the ability to act decisively in unpredictable circumstances. She considered the subtle challenges she had faced, the unseen threats, the exercise coordination, and the anomalies she had corrected. Each event reinforced a lesson she had always known. Vigilance, observation, and calm action were the keys to success. And while she had proven her ability to handle crises, she understood that higher stakes, and even greater challenges, were inevitable. A knock at her door broke her reflection. Jackson entered cautiously. "Mara, everyone's talking. You've set a standard nobody can ignore. But there's something else." Mara looked up, intrigued but composed. "Go on." Jackson hesitated, then said, "Some people think what happened with the security breach and the exercises wasn't random. They think someone is testing the base and maybe even testing you." Mara's eyes narrowed subtly. She had suspected as much. "Then we prepare," she said calmly. "Observation, anticipation, action. No assumptions, no delays." Jackson nodded, understanding that Mara's focus was unwavering. "Right, just be careful." As Mara settled for the night, a lingering sense of unease accompanied her. The recognition, the praise, and the awareness of her influence were satisfying, but they were only part of the picture. Someone, somewhere, had orchestrated subtle challenges with intent. The fallout wasn't merely admiration or envy, it was the prelude to something larger. Mara welcomed the unknown. She had faced chaos, anticipated threats, and acted decisively under pressure. And yet, the true test, the one that would push her skill, judgment, and composure to their limits, had yet to arrive. Her mind prepared for tomorrow, knowing that while recognition could open doors, vigilance, preparation, and action were what would truly determine outcomes. Mara Hayes was ready, always ready, to confront whatever challenge lay ahead. The sun barely peeked over the horizon, but Mara Hayes was already alert, moving through the base with her usual calm precision. There was a subtle tension in the air, thicker than previous days, heavier, almost tangible. Mara had a sense that today's challenges would not be ordinary drills or predictable obstacles. Something significant was coming. As she reached the training yard, her instincts confirmed her suspicion. Personnel were more tense than usual, whispers hurried and cautious, and the senior officers moved with a blend of urgency and uncertainty. Mara didn't speak. She didn't need to. Observation, preparation, and decisive action had always spoken louder than words. A sudden alarm shattered the morning calm, a breach unlike any before. Mara's eyes scanned the scene. Multiple points of access had been compromised simultaneously. Chaos erupted, but Mara stayed calm. She calculated risks, noted weak points, and identified the likely source of the disturbance. "Move with me," she instructed quietly, guiding a small response team through the maze of corridors. Every step was deliberate, every instruction precise. Mara's mind worked faster than the chaos surrounding her, anticipating movements, predicting outcomes, and neutralizing threats before they could escalate. Jackson and Elena followed closely, witnessing Mara's control over the situation. Jackson whispered, "I don't understand how she does it. She's everywhere at once, yet no one notices until it's too late." Elena nodded. "It's not magic. She's observing, calculating, and acting. That's why she's always ahead. And today, it feels like the stakes are higher than ever." Indeed, the simultaneous breaches suggested coordination, intent, and skill. Whoever orchestrated this was testing the base, and Mara personally, on a scale far beyond previous incidents. Mara reached the central control hub, where critical systems had been compromised. Using her insight and tactical knowledge, she quickly assessed the situation, isolating vulnerable points and directing team members to secure them. Her calm voice contrasted with the growing panic around her. Minutes later, the immediate threat was contained, though the scale of the operation became evident. Someone with deep knowledge of the base's routines had executed a meticulously planned incursion. The subtle chaos Mara had sensed days earlier had culminated in a direct test, a challenge designed to push her skills, judgment, and composure to the limits. Commander Davis arrived, eyes wide with concern and respect. "Mara Hayes, your coordination, calmness, and foresight have prevented disaster. I don't know how to properly commend you." Mara remained composed. "Sir, the threat was manageable. Observation and decisive action ensured containment. The true concern lies in understanding the motives behind these coordinated breaches." Her words implied more than action. They carried insight, strategy, and the understanding that consequences extended beyond immediate resolution. As the day progressed, Mara worked tirelessly to analyze every detail: compromised systems, unusual movements, and subtle clues left by the intruders. She shared her findings with the command team, offering strategies to prevent future incidents and uncover the source of the orchestrated threat. Her calm, precise analysis left everyone in awe, including skeptics who had once doubted her. By evening, the base had recovered operationally, but the knowledge that someone had intentionally tested them loomed large. Mara understood that while immediate danger was averted, the larger challenge remained unseen. Later, in the quiet of the mess hall, Mara finally allowed herself a moment of reflection. The recognition she had earned over the past days was satisfying, yes, but it didn't diminish the awareness that the real test was not yet over. Whoever orchestrated the coordinated breaches had the knowledge, skill, and intent to create far greater disruption. Mara's calm efficiency had countered the immediate threat, but the subtle tension hinted at a larger, unresolved challenge. Jackson and Elena joined her, both visibly impressed but also unsettled. "Mara, you handled all of that like it was just another day," Jackson said. Elena added, "And yet, the sense of something bigger is still there. I can't shake it." Mara nodded slightly. "There's always something bigger. Observation, preparation, action, these are the tools. But the unknown remains. And that is where true readiness is tested." As night fell, Mara gazed out at the base, her mind processing the day's events and anticipating what lay ahead. She had faced chaos, neutralized threats, and earned the respect of those around her. Yet, the subtle cues, the careful orchestration of events, and the hints of intent left an undeniable tension in the air. Mara Hayes had proven she could adapt, anticipate, and act decisively under pressure. But the story was far from over. The orchestrator of the challenges remained unseen, a shadow on the periphery of the base's awareness, testing not just systems but her resolve, judgment, and insight. The final moments of the day were quiet, almost serene, yet filled with anticipation. Mara understood that recognition and skill were only part of the equation. Vigilance, strategy, and adaptability were the keys to surviving the challenges yet to come. She had proven herself repeatedly, but the unresolved tension, the unseen hand behind the orchestrated chaos, promised that tomorrow would demand even more. With a final glance at the stars above, Mara Hayes allowed herself a small, confident smile. She was ready for whatever came next. The battles ahead would test every ounce of her skill, observation, and composure. And though the immediate confrontation had ended, the mystery remained, a shadow waiting silently, and Mara would meet it as she always had, calm, prepared, and unstoppable.